Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 2025. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. I am your host, Dr. KJ, and I am excited and delighted to have you join us for this very first episode of Living the Liberated Life with Dr. KJ in the year of 2025. I hope and pray that each and every one of you, I hope you're doing well. I hope your families are well. I want us to keep in mind that there's some people that did not make it to 2025. And while we mourn with and we pray for those that did not cross over with us, we thank God for their lives and we thank God for their legacies. We pray now that each and every one of us that made it over will use the moments that we have wisely, and we will be empowered and impacted to be able to live a liberated life. Before we get into tonight's episode, I want to share with you two very exciting things that Liberated to Love and Dr. KJ are embarking on in 2025. Well, actually three. I'm going to solicit your prayers and your well wishes and your good energy for a few things. The first thing is on February 1st. February 1st. You all will be receiving your Amazon links because I have been blessed to be able to birth a new endeavor entitled Little KJ, The Colorful Life of Little KJ, which is a children's coloring book for little people. And our first installment of this series is going to deal with everything that has to do with culture. It's going to deal with culture and family. And so Little KJ is loosely based on me, Dr. KJ. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Little KJ's mother's heritage and her culture, which is my mother's from Jamaica and my father is from Guyana. And Little KJ is going to talk about those two countries coming together and creating Little KJ. So I hope that you and your family members would support this endeavor. And then on February 4th, there is another endeavor. What has been pressed on my heart has been to serve those that are less fortunate than us. As many of you know that have followed us and have watched Living the Liberated Life, you know that I had Dr. Zalex Rivera come on, who works with the homeless population or the unhoused here in the New York City area. And as a result of a collaboration with the conversation with her, I have embarked on a collaboration with the Westchester Barber Academy. And we are going to bring into a family shelter food, clothing, barber, and cosmetology services. And we are going to bring photographers where we can provide the families with family portraits and meet some of their immediate needs of food and clothing so that they might be better equipped to go throughout the rest of their year, knowing that homelessness is not only something that takes place, or we don't think of them only during the holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, but those that are unhoused and they need our support all year long. So that is another endeavor. And then I solicit your prayers because myself, my husband and I, and 10 other couples are going on the Love on Fire Couples Retreat in Costa Rica. So we solicit your prayers and all of your support. We are still looking for individuals that might want to volunteer for any of these events that are going to be taking place. And you know how to contact me. You can contact me right here on YouTube. You can contact me on my Instagram or my Facebook page, or you can just go ahead and send me a good old email at Dr. KJ, at Dr. KJ Agard at gmail.com. All right, family. So that's all for the commercial. That's all for the highlights and all that good stuff. But tonight, I want to introduce many of you to one of my dear friends. And it's interesting because I didn't know her forever and a day, but now it's it's over 10 years we've known each other. I met this young woman when I was candidating for a church as a minister of children, youth, and young adults in Phoenix, Arizona. And she was the person that picked me up from the airport, took me around to see Phoenix. I learned so much about Phoenix in my first visit, and she became my friend. And our friendship has grown. I was able to perform the marriage ceremony for her son, her eldest son. And now they're like my nephews, her two sons, her husband's my brother, she's my sister. But even beyond that, she is a force to be reckoned with, not only in the spirit realm, but in the business realm. I'm going to let her share her story about how she got to where she is. And then she's going to talk to us about empathy-driven leadership. So I want you to, if you're on here tonight, I want you to go ahead and drop in the chat some love for my sister friend like no other, Sister Crystal Blackwell. Crystal!
Hey. Hi, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Dr. KJ.
Happy New Year, sis. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm wonderful. Yes.
And Sister Crystal is coming to us, all my New York people that have on your hats and your gloves and, you're wrapped up in blankets. Crystal, right. Where are you and what is the temperature?
So I am in Phoenix, Arizona area. So I'm going to look here. We're looking at a sunny 70 degrees. So it's fabulous. It's a great way to begin the new year. Not a cloud in the sky and bright sunshine. So yeah.
And we have pending snow.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's okay. Change always happens, right? You gotta
it's a wonderful thing, though. It's a wonderful thing. Look, all the seasons matter, right? Yes, all the seasons deserve some respect. All right. And so, Sister Crystal, tell us about you. Who are you? Where are you from? How did you get to where you are? What do you do? Talk to us. Tell us who you are.
Well, I think I've always been a teacher. I was a child. I was a little girl who played school. Of course, I was the teacher. I was not the student. I played church and I was the preacher, so I was always, yes. And I even at one point wanted to be a nun. So as a child, I always thought of serving and teaching. And that manifested into leadership roles in corporate America. And I spent 20 plus years in corporate America leading and doing well, but still knowing that I wasn't able to really touch the people the way I felt like I could because it wasn't structured that way. So I left and I opened up my own firm, Crystal Clear Results, and where I do training and coaching, and I do leadership strategy sessions and consulting. And I take all of my years of experience in corporate America and I lead with the heart. And I teach organizations, leaders, nonprofit leaders, small business owners how to lead their business with empathy. And I didn't even know that was sort of a call for me because, my statement on my business is helping businesses create a culture of belonging. Well, you can't belong unless you empathize.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's really good. Yeah, that's good. You said something that I want to dig into a bit before we get to this empathy-driven leadership.
Yeah.
The thing that you said was you left.
Yes. Oh yeah.
That I think that's a really strong launching pad, particularly because we are at the top of a new year.
Mm-hmm.
There's some individuals that last year they were like, I can't take this anymore. Mm-hmm. And there's somebody that's like, I want to live a more liberated life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so talk to us about how you made the decision to leave.
Yes.
And how that has grown you and your faith.
Yeah. So, it's biblical when you write things down, it can manifest, right? So when I was a senior in high school, for those who can remember, you used to get these memory books and people would sign their names and they would give you greetings and, just autograph and those types of things. And in there was a page that you're able to put your 5, 10, 15-year goals on. So my 5-year goals, one of them was to be an entrepreneur. And I'll be honest, we're talking 80s. I had no idea really what that meant, but I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I wrote that down, and of course, didn't think about it. Lived my life, got married, had my kids, and started my journey in corporate America. Now, I mentioned earlier, Dr. KJ, I was good. I knew I was good because I got the accolades, I got the awards, I got the bonuses, I got everything that the world gives you to tell you that you're good at something, right? But I knew, like, in my heart, I was never truly satisfied in doing what I was doing. It was something was missing. I felt autopilot, So I remember the moment, and the entire time my family is watching me. My sons, my husband, they're watching me walk, almost like not me being my authentic self, because I wasn't in my purpose. I was in school, right? Gathering information. So I was working for an organization, my last organization. They hired me for leadership. That was what they were looking for. It was a software company. And we went to Canada for an offsite retreat to set up goals for the next year. And it was the CEO of the company, all executive team, including myself and others, maybe about 15, 20 people. And we were in Canada and in the woods. He went to a whiteboard and he put up a couple 100 million or some sort of large number. And he circled it. He looked at me and said, "Crystal, can your team deliver this year?" And I heard, "It's time to go." Now, it wasn't because of the number, because I've done that before. My season was up.
Right.
So I go home. I talk to my husband. He said, "I can hold us down for 2 years, but I need you to do what you need to do." And I did. I quit. I quit on my birthday. My birthday was my last date. And I haven't looked back. And I took all those years of experience. Praise God. All those years of experience to me was like school, preparing me. So I'm often looking back, gathering information, my learnings, because it was a purpose. I was supposed to do that for that length of time because I was in school. So now I just repurpose it into what God has for me, which is, talking about creating a culture of inclusion, which has now even gotten deeper into empathy.
Okay. And I love that. And so you even now alluded to the fact that when you left, I think a lot of times people think that once they leave or once they make a big move or make a big step, that everything is clear. Right?
No. Everything isn't crystal clear.
Everything is not crystal clear, right? Pun intended, right? But essentially, you step out on faith.
Absolutely.
Believing you see something, you heard God, you know what you're supposed to do. But then that thing begins to grow and it morphs. And it started out as one little thing, and then it becomes something much bigger. Absolutely. And so you said, how did you start? You started on your own with what? What was your
My one thing was coaching. My one thing was life coaching, because I went and I got certified as a life coach, because that was like my first step. And I believed in that moment that was going to be the business of it. So I went and I researched and I found a wonderful school in San Diego, and I went there, stayed a week, and I got intense certification in life coaching. And they took me through all the exercises. So like a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists, before they practice, they go through therapy. As a life coach, I went through my life coaching.
Okay. Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. I see you. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. So you went through your life coaching. And so from life coaching, you then went into this whole DEI, so to speak, right?
Right. So what happened with life coaching, I ended up coaching leaders of organizations, CEOs became my client base. Just naturally, I went to that space. It kind of happened for me. So they would ask me about their staff Then they started asking me about my experience. And then it went from, well, can you do some training for us? And then it started to develop. So it started with my relationship with the leaders, coaching the leaders. And then the leaders started asking me about my past experience. And I started doing strategy sessions. And then I started creating training for them. So initially it started with just coaching, which taught me how to ask good questions and to listen and to really dig into root causes and to think of different exercises for people they can use to really dig into, like, what are their blocks? What are their triggers? Well, corporate leaders, that's every day for them. So it started to go on, it started to sort of, the business grow and redesign itself based on customer need and demand and the skills I had. So it was super easy for me to adapt. I mean, I would go home and I would do a training module in one evening, and I would kick out training modules in just like in a day. I had a huge library of all the things that I create. So then I noticed, oh, there's a need. So there goes the strategy, the consulting, the training, and the coaching. They all go together.
Right. And I like to say it this way. I like to say that nothing we go through is wasted.
Nothing.
Right. So the fact that you took that class in junior high school and it seemed very irrelevant. It seemed like, why am I here? Why am I taking, basket weaving? Like people, like always say basket weaving. I don't understand. It has nothing to do with A, B, C, and D. We find out later on down, if we live long enough, we realize how some of the skills we learned in gym, some of the skills we learned in these other places, the places you would least expect to learn them are places that we have learned some of the tools and the lessons and all those things, if we pay attention, right?
If we pay attention.
So, Crystal, here we are, 2025. We thank God we made it to another year. There's some of us, again, that are in the midst of this thing called we like to call it, what do they call it? We're in the rat race, or
hamster wheel. Yeah.
Right. The hamster wheel, right? Of life. And we are trying to figure out, because we feel uncomfortable, even in leadership, because as much as we would like to lead with what you call leading with empathy, we have our own traumas, we have our own drama and things. And sometimes we're unable to be as empathetic in leadership as we ought to be. So talk to us a little bit about what this means to have empathy-driven leadership shaping our future in 2025.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. And I love to, first, I want to define empathy. Not that I don't think people know it, but I just like to kind of level set the definition so we have a starting point. So empathy is the ability to understand someone's emotions, feelings, perspectives. Sympathy, which is a little different. Sympathy is a little different. That's when you're able to just feel it. You feel them and you feel sorry for them, and it kind of stops there. So we have empathy, which is you're able to understand people's perspective. You have to walk a mile in their shoes. Another way you can explain it. And sympathy is just I just feel it. So I think in order to step into empathy, to really lean into it, and the way that to kind of get you prepared to be an empathetic leader, you have to create an empathetic mindset. And this is an area I think that we're always, I'm the first to say, I'm always working on this. It's a journey. It's a skill. Empathy is a skill. And the way we create an empathetic mindset is we remain curious. We ask questions. We be able to have those bold conversations. You're genuinely seeking information, and it's from a genuine space. You're open to what's coming your way, what's not coming your way. You're open to different notions and preconceived ideas. You're really checking your biases. You're really mindful of it. Your compassion, so you're kind. And again, all these things. It's a lot to work on all the time, but we're working on this on a daily basis. We're really digging into this. And then humility, which I think kind of goes across the board for just about everything, is accepting things and others, even when you don't understand. Just have a level of deep acceptance when I don't understand, or I haven't been that route before. And I'm thinking red, you're thinking green. Just having a humility and knowing that. And then lastly, being present, active presence. Because we all know how to fake and nod our head like, I hear you. And we're thinking about 10 things, or we're not fully present, but being actively fully present, really leaning and being engaging. So really getting your mindset prepared to be an empathetic leader. So oftentimes, Dr. KJ, I spend a lot of my time with leaders and with people or leaders, organizations, talking about that mindset space first. And that could take a moment. And that's a shift before we even begin to lead others in that way.
And so you shared with me, I believe it was 4 or 5 particular areas in which we can really dive into this, right? And so would you like to go ahead and share that? Or
so we can talk about, so if you don't mind, I'd like to share empathy. There's 3 different types of empathy that I think that most people, to get a further understanding, then of course we will share. So the 3 different types of empathy, there's emotional empathy, compassionate empathy, and then there's cognitive empathy. So emotional empathy is like, I feel it. Like, I feel you. I understand what you're doing. I feel it. Cognitive is, I understand. Like, I understand what happened here. And compassionate is you're actually walking it out. You're taking action. I'm helping you out, Dr. KJ. I'm supporting you. So oftentimes we'll do emotional and cognitive. We'll kill that one. But then when it comes to compassionate, that's the one that we slip and we just don't know how to show up for others.
So how does that play itself out in a setting? Let's just use you and I for an example. So and let's just put together a scenario. So a scenario, I don't know. You can give me a scenario.
I'll give you a scenario that I give leaders. It's a biblical scenario, and then we can do one that I speak to this all the time, where Jesus, he led with empathy. Like, he is the model. Like, he's the model that I built a lot. So when you think about when Mary, not his, not mother, not his the mother Mary, but Mary, who, when she lost her brother Lazarus, and she was crying and weeping, when she told Jesus, what did he do? He wept. He demonstrated emotional empathy. He showed her that. I think that's the only time that it's in the Bible that he demonstrated this is what emotional empathy looks like. I'm showing it. Now, it doesn't mean everyone has to cry, but you get my point. You have to demonstrate that authentically. Then the next thing is he allowed Mary to grieve and talk about it. He allowed her to let it out. He allowed her moment, right? He didn't go right in to fix it. He allowed her to grieve. And guess what? He grieved with her. He was
even in her anger, if you would have been here, the accusation, right?
The accusation. He stuck with that, right? And sometimes, Dr. KJ, will skip over that because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to hear the anger. It's uncomfortable to hear that part. We'll skip over it. And then he modeled at the very end, of course, we're not raising people from the dead, but he did something. Did something, So when I walk this through to leaders that, of course, I'm giving you, the icon, the Lord of Lords examples, but what's the best example to give? I mean,
right.
That's what it looks like.
All right, wonderful. And so we have the 3 areas of empathy, 3 different areas of empathy. Wonderful. And those of you that are watching tonight, feel free to drop a question in the chat, because I'm here. Miss Crystal is here, and we are ready, willing, and I believe we are able to answer some of those questions, or at least lead you in the right direction to get the answers for which you seek. So, Crystal, go ahead and share with us some of these other points that you
Right.
were going to make tonight.
Right. Yes, Dr. KJ. So, like shifting your mindset toward empathy, there's ways you can shift. Now, again, it's a skill and we're all doing it. So there's no one who's doing it always right. And also it can happen moment by moment. You can do really well, like in the morning hour and then drop the ball in the back end. So you're
Mhm.
always working on it. So the first one you want to do is have a level of self-awareness, like know who you are, like truly know what kind of person you are, understand your own emotions. If you know this isn't a good time for you to be connecting with people, if you're going through maybe something emotionally, then you want to make sure that you're good. So that means
Mhm.
sometimes we can't show up for everybody, right? We
Mhm.
can't put
Mhm.
ourselves out there. We can't always be giving, burning ourselves out. So that first one, self-awareness, is a constant check. You know, how am I feeling right now? Am I able to give? Am I able to authentically show up and be empathetic? I mean, am I
Mhm.
able to demonstrate all three? So do a self-awareness. The other one is growth mindset. And I really love growth mindset. There's a book out. It's fairly old. It's called Growth Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. And she talks about growth mindset, which means always learning, always wanting to learn something. So always have a growth mindset. So view empathy as I'm learning about someone. I'm learning about KJ as she's going through this grieving process. I'm learning
Mhm.
about myself as she's learning about grieving. So look at connecting with people as you're learning, not telling them, not trying to tell them how to fix it, as you're learning. Vulnerability. Um, be willing to be yourself. I mean, when Jesus cried, I mean, talk about vulnerability, okay? I mean, so I'm not saying that if you're a leader, you're crying in a business meeting, but
Mhm.
sometimes you need to show people how you feel, and be vulnerable and say things like, wow, I don't know how it is to lose a pet, but I know how it is to grieve, and I understand what grieving feels like, and I'm sad because I get that. I get what it feels like to grieve,
Yeah.
you're
But
grieving your pet, I'm grieving a human. It's the same emotion, grief.
mhm. Mhm. I'm thinking about, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, if you can recall the movie Tyler Perry redid, for Colored Girls,
Mhm,
the
mhm.
play by Ntozake Shange, but then Tyler Perry redid it, and
Yes.
the character that is typically played by the woman in red who had the two young children, in that film, he kind of updated it, was she was working at a job and her boss lacked empathy. As we're
Very.
talking through, she
Mhm.
totally lacked empathy until she was in the car with her and saw the tragedy take place.
Right.
And if any of you know what I'm talking about, I
Mhm.
think that was a really great way for us to see what the lack of empathy looks like,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know? And sometimes we don't know when we do see empathy at work
Right.
until we don't see it at work, right?
Right. Right.
Until we have a supervisor or a boss who you say, "Hey, I'm running late because da 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 da." Well, I don't know what you're gonna do, but if you're late one more time, you're gonna be fired. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's real. I like to use that example of grieving. I actually work with an organization that when we went through that example of grieving, and knowing that a lot of his employees, a lot of them had pets who they viewed as their own, their child, they implemented a PTO and a grieving policy that just covered grief as a whole. So it doesn't matter if it's your parent. It doesn't matter if it's whoever. If you're grieving, you're allotted X amount of days.
If it's your parakeet, I don't care if
It
it's your
doesn't matter.
parakeet or your parent.
Right.
You are getting those 5 days to
You're getting
grieve.
those days. Right. And I thought,
Wow.
that's leading with empathy and putting it to
Mhm.
action, right? That compassionate part, action, took action with that. So the last
Right.
one is action oriented care. And that's really about us taking care of ourselves,
Mhm.
knowing when we can show up. As leaders or people who just serve or give, you know who you are, you're a giver and you're always pouring out, you become depleted. You get burnt out. You hear that in the corporate saying, you burn out. So you have to make sure your levels are high, your levels are up. So, if you know you're going to have a tough conversation, ask yourself, is this a good time for me? How do I feel about it? Do I have the capacity to have this conversation, and will I be able to be fully present, or is it not a good time? And it's okay if someone comes to you with that and it's not a good time, to say, hey, let me take care of myself, because when we typically don't act the way we're proud of. We're not usually proud of the response,
That's right.
Right. And you want to feel good about it, about being an empathetic driven leader, or empathetic friend, or a partner. I mean, all of these principles, Dr. KJ, is personal and business. It can go anywhere. Everything I do is practical, personal and business. So
then how do we apply it? How do we apply it then? We're in a new year. This is all really great, but how do we apply these? How do we apply self-awareness? How do we apply growth mindset, vulnerability, and action-oriented care? How are we able to really employ all of these different points in our everyday life to have a more successful 2025? Because I declare that there may be someone that, if they would have employed some of these tools throughout 2024, may have been happier with the results, and weren't as excited, would not have been so ready for the year to end. But because we're not employing the right tools, and because we don't have the right perspective or vision for our lives, oftentimes we find ourselves frustrated, angry, and ready just to throw in the towel.
Right.
So how do we employ these tools?
Good. So we have 4 tools, 4 things that I've shared. And what I don't want you to think is you got to go gangbusters on all 4. So I would recommend that you start with the first one, and you really understand your level of self-awareness. Who am I in 2025? What is it? First of all, let's do a quick reflect. Look back in 2024, ask yourself, what did I do well? What did I like about it? So I posted this on LinkedIn. Do a personal SWOT analysis on a personal level. Do a personal strengths. What are my strengths? What are my personal threats? What are my opportunities? What are my weaknesses? Do a personal SWOT as you're beginning, and then set a couple of goals on areas that you really want to focus on. Don't be hard on yourself. This isn't a beat up session. This is an awareness session. I want to call this is your thinking. You're thinking. This is not the heart space. I don't want you emotional. This is a head exercise. So you go into it like a practitioner, like a doctor, and you start looking at ways that you can prescribe little prescriptions for yourself.
And we've got to be real, right? We've got to. I think that brings us back to vulnerability, right? Because while this may not be something that we share with anyone else, if we are really going to do a SWOT analysis, if we're really going to look at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the T is for
your threats,
those areas, if we're really going to deal with that, we have to be vulnerable.
Right. And this could be for some people a moment, as it should, because it's a lot to ask for you. So I would say even the SWOT analysis, break it down. Maybe 1 week, focus on your strengths. Please focus on your strengths. We never look at what we do really, really, really well. And we should celebrate what we do, celebrate our gifts, celebrate your wins, pat yourself on the back, cheer yourself on. So really go through the SWOT analysis and focus on self-awareness. That will naturally drive vulnerability, to your point, if you do it right. Like, really be open. And again, don't beat yourself up. Don't say, oh my God, I wish I could be. Just kind of go into it your head. When you start getting emotional and warm about it, step away. Because this is a head exercise. I don't want your heart here yet. I want you to think, go through this. And then after you get to vulnerability, when you start thinking about what steps you want to take, think about the growth mindset. It's a super easy read. You can Google growth mindset and just dig into what that is, and what does growth mindset mean for you. But, I like to sum it up saying being a student of life, like really learning mode, which is almost like a bystander period. So from time to time, I go into quiet crystal, which is hard because, I like to talk. I go into quiet crystal. And then I start observing things, and I growing my mind, so that could be an exercise. And then action oriented care, build in some sort of a consistent care system for you, whatever that care system is. It could be chopping up with your girl, Dr. KJ, with some Liberated tea, right? On the phone, enjoying, talking about makeup, whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do that can really ease and soften you and ease the stress is going to come your way, because things are going to happen.
They're going to happen. Yes. And so how is what we're talking about different from setting a New Year's resolution?
I personally love New Year's resolution for Crystal, but I do respect so many people are like, I don't like it, I don't do it. So I like to say, not really a resolution, it could be a reset. It could just be a reset. It could be, it could be a continuation of what you're focusing on. It could be a refocus. You could, it could be whatever you label it. I think we label and it gets in our way. Just do it. Don't let resolution or don't let goals, don't let the words get in your way. Just do it. I just like to say, keep it small and practical and realistic. And build on that and just build on that.
Yeah, that's really good. If anyone has any questions, please feel free. We've had a few comments. And I saw that someone did make a comment when you were giving the reference, you were using Jesus's story up for a reference. And she said, I love that reference. Great way to break that down, Lady Crystal. And then we have I see some sisters on here say Happy New Year. And then India says self window. Very good. A self window. And I think that was referring to that self-reflection we were talking about earlier.
Good. That's good,
really,
India.
Really good. Really good. So if there are any other questions, we'd love for you all to share any of your other questions, any of your other comments. And so, Crystal, as someone who may not be in the business world, right? If you're an entrepreneur, if you are a single mom, if you are any area of your life, if you're in ministry, if you're in corporate America, what would you say has been or can potentially be the biggest obstacle or hurdle that keeps us from being empathetic?
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Really of all, just not, really struggling with understanding who we really are. And when we talk about self-awareness, Dr. KJ, we always think about our bad selves. And we don't celebrate that we are really good people. We're beautiful people. We're smart. I mean, we're the image of God. So there's a lot of great things about us. So when we start digging into self-awareness, people, I've seen it happen so many times, and I stop them right in the middle of it. They start listing all the things that they're not good at. They never talk about their gifts, their talents, any of that. So I think that because we're so focused on the negative, the left, when you think about self-awareness, your whole self, like all that good, you got way more good than you think you do. It just overshadows what we don't. But the parts we want to work on, of course, people point them out, right?
Absolutely.
People gonna call you out on your stuff, and then you're gonna point it out because you know thyself. So I just want to encourage you to really get the level of self-awareness where you're able to encourage yourself for real, because you know who you are.
Yeah. And part of that self-awareness is knowing your triggers, knowing your traumas, knowing those things. And I really think that if you are going to be empathetic, one of the things that we might need to be mindful of is in the same realm of self-awareness is when we begin to see ourselves in someone else, right? And it's not a good thing. Like, let's say someone who is an alcoholic, and you can tell, the way an alcoholic moves and the way that, so when you see that person coming to work and you see, how do you then as a leader not take that person under your wing and say, hey, I see the road you're going down. I want to help you.
Mhm.
Right. And so this is the language we use when we are actually operating as a
Mhm.
leader that is empathetic or an empathetic leader. What is the language? What are some of the key words that we ought to be using?
I always like to ask. I think first of all, you want to make sure that you are leading, or at least you feel in your heart you're doing your best as being an empathetic leader, or they're not going to take you as being authentic. So you just can't
Mm.
jump into this. That's why you want to practice it on yourself. But if you do, and as a leader, I've had those experiences where I had to go to someone. But I think the first thing is to ask them if it's okay. Dr. KJ, this is a good time for us to talk about, your tardiness, or
Mhm.
the fact that you're late on your projects. Is this a good time to talk about it? And that will give you so much information, because if they say no,
Mm.
don't get weird and crazy and upset. If they say no, honor it. There is a reason for somebody
Mm.
to say, this is not a good time right now. We don't know what's going on in her head. We don't know what's going on in her life. So you want to
Mm.
be able to, as the person who's going to be reaching out, the leader, you want to make sure that when you do get Dr. KJ's time, I'm getting all of you. And I can't get all of you if you're distracted. So
Mm.
ask permission. Like, is this a good time for us to chat about, last month's report? And if they tell
Mhm.
you no, when is it a good time? Let me know when it is, and try to accommodate it. Don't get an attitude. Don't make it like, oh my, really, again, that's where empathy begins, right then and there. You're demonstrating.
Mm. I
Um,
love that. I love the honoring and respecting, because, how many of us have been in situations and scenarios where we know it's not a good time, right? We had a rough morning, but we ultimately know we have to go to work.
mhm.
We've got to show up.
Gotta
But
show up.
what you don't know is I just spent an hour in the bathroom trying to get the
Mhm.
puffiness from under my eyes because I've been crying all morning. And
Yeah.
now when I come in here, I'm putting on a good face. And now you want to kind of pour salt in the wound. If you ask me and you honor me where I am, then I'm able to say today's really not a good day and
Mhm.
be honest.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that you
Yeah.
said that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard to do. It's hard when you're the person who wants to share and you really want to get it out. So, it's tough for them, because then they have to, take a pause and be patient and do some self-care and wait for that person. So it's not always, it sounds easy and sometimes it isn't. But I also want to make this point. Empathy is not always the doom and gloom. Empathy
Mm.
shows up in celebrations. So if you had a great, say you had a great, project at work that you completed, I can demonstrate empathy with you by celebrating with you.
That's good. That's
We
good.
didn't
Because
get,
we always hear about empathy
we did
as
absolutely as negative.
Mhm.
And that's why I get in front of leaders. It's important that I share empathy. Is just, it's a two-way. It's a side where you can lift people up. Hey, I remember when I hit my first sales goal. Congratulations.
Yeah,
I'm
that's good.
happy for you. What can I do to make you hit your goal next month? All that's empathy. When
I
we
love
think of
that.
empathy, we think of, oh, empathy, but no, it's to celebrate and honor and lift people up as well. And I think that message is the message I'm really pushing forward, because we give empathy like a bad label. It's like,
Yeah.
it's gloom and gloom, but it's not. It should show
Mhm.
up in all things.
I love that. I really love that because, to your point, we do. Every time I've heard from college, every time I've heard the word empathy, while we know that now we know it's not, but that is the way it's been used. It's been used in that way that we would speak about, oh, you need to be more empathetic. You need to be more empathetic. It's when someone's hurting or somebody's broken. How about, but I have experience, in some very high moments, right,
Mhm.
where I've had people in my quote unquote circle that have not been empathetic.
Hello? Oh yeah, absolutely. Listen, let me tell you, and that was something that I feel like is the uniqueness of this leadership leading the 21st century with empathy, is that it is inclusive of positive empathy, and
Mm.
leading with that. So imagine being in a workplace where you're being led and by positive empathy. Okay, there goes your diversity's wrapped up. You gotta be equitable if you're gonna be empathizing with people, and you can't do it without making them feel included. So
Mm.
we just do the one thing. A lot of we can check off the boxes of other things.
If we just respect the humanity in one another.
Yeah.
How about that? Like, we don't even have to get fancy terms like
I know, right?
empathy-driven leadership. We don't even have to put it in these fancy. Let's just respect one another. Let's just love one another. I think, the golden rule: love your neighbor as yourself.
Right, right. Or
Like,
my grandmother used to say this. She was born at the turn of the century. She's passed on, but she would say, "Be nice," just straight up. Be
just
nice.
be kind. Be
Yeah.
nice.
And if you acted out, she would say, that wasn't very nice. You didn't get a true lecture. You just kind of got the be nice, or that wasn't very nice. And you knew exactly what happened, what was going on. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's just human nature. We could just get back to really focusing on that. And I think, everybody makes their own choice how they want to navigate, but I would just recommend find what works for you. If you want to focus on empathy in a positive way first and really practice that skill, because remember, empathy is a skill that you can practice and learn. It's a muscle you have to practice. That's a great way to do it. You're going to naturally build on the other side. So just take baby steps. Every day, we're always learning. I will never say I'm an expert. I've nailed this, but the level of awareness helps you.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's one of the most powerful. That what level of awareness is really, really powerful. And so, Crystal, I thank you so much, because all of this was valuable. I love, some of my takeaways are definitely understanding what empathy really is, and as one who is a leader in many areas of my life. One of the things I remember doing a devotion for an organization, and I just spoke to them about kindness, because we live in a day and an age where there are people taking their lives. There are people that are losing their lives. And as we move through this world, I would hate to be the reason for someone, or be the person to say the last mean thing to someone. And when we think about ourselves in the leadership role, I have not always been a nice leader. I admit it. I have not always been a nice leader.
All of us can say that, right?
Right. Because sometimes we can see the stuff coming, and you're like, again, really, you know what I mean? Like, here we go.
Right.
Right. But being able to discern what is authentic and true, and cultivating an atmosphere where those that you do work with, your team, your organization, that everyone is operating and has built these skills and has built the skill of empathy, then our respect grows, our kindness grows, and we just become nice people, right?
Yeah.
Just be nice, right? It's nice to be nice. Like they say, it's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice, right?
Yes.
So to all you leaders out there, to all you CEOs, CFOs, pastors, principals, all the people in all these,
ministry leaders. You can be a leader of a Girl Scout troop.
Listen, right?
How about this? We're all leaders. We're all leaders,
and we all started somewhere, right?
Yes,
and
right.
So if we take that to heart, that it is nice to be important. Nice to have your name called. It's nice. Right. It's nice to be important, but it is so much more important to be nice. And so, Crystal, with that being said, I am going to ask you to share with us your last liberating thought as we bring our episode to a close. But before you share that, I just want to remind you all that, again, Liberated to Love is hosting a community service. It's a Love in Action Community Service Day at a family shelter in Queens, New York. We want you, and you. We need donations. We need volunteers. We need all of those things. So come on out and join us. We're taking monetary donations. We're taking clothing donations. We are taking donations of all kinds. So please, ma'am, please, sir, be sure to contact me if you'd like to be a part of this endeavor. And as I shared with you before, Living the Liberated Life is always pleased to share with you the wonderful things going on in our lives. And another wonderful thing is little KJ is here, guys. Little KJ, my coloring book, is here and will be available for purchase on February 1st on Amazon. And so we are gearing up. We want you to purchase for your niece, purchase for your neighbor, purchase for the Sunday school class, purchase for the classroom, purchase for the Girl Scout, Jack and Jill, purchase for everybody. Touch your neighbor and say, everybody needs a little KJ in their life. And so, with that being said, Sister Crystal, why don't you share with us your final liberating thought?
Okay, my final liberating thought that I experienced, and I think for me personally, was my resilience. I experienced, mountaintop highs and valley lows in 2024. And I realized, you know what, I got some resilience. I got some bounce back, and didn't take away, parts of me. That I'm still whole and I'm still together and I'm still, Crystal is still, she's there. So my resilience didn't take from me. It actually gave me, and it built me up, and it gave me more as a gift. So that's my liberated thought. I'm liberated for resilience.
I love it. I love it. I think all of us can grow from that. And so, friends, family, you can follow Crystal. She is on LinkedIn. I encourage each and every one of you to follow her. Get her to come and share for one of your organizations, for your next meeting, for your next church conference, for your next district meeting, for your next regional conference, whatever it may be. Have her come do a workshop, share, because I really believe that this is the season that we need more empathetic leadership, and she is the one to lead us in that direction. So with that being said, friends, family, we thank you, and you for joining us tonight. And as I always say, live liberated. God bless you and good night. See you soon. Bye-bye.